So hi everybody, thank you so much for joining us today. This webinar is all about helping farmers and farm owners gain some knowledge, tools and confidence to enter into successful contractual arrangements. And that's whether it's contract milking, contract managing, share milking, dairy or sheep and beef. There's some really well-trodden pathways, especially in the dairy industry, to step through a really rewarding career, achieving your goals, whatever they may be. Becoming self-employed, owning your own stock, managing the family succession process, or working towards an equity partnership or farm ownership. Taking those next steps is incredibly exciting, but it can also be really, really daunting. Often people enter into new arrangements with rose-tinted glasses, and the nitty-gritty side of things, the paperwork, the agreements, all that detail can feel really unfamiliar and really uncomfortable. Honestly, I think working through the terms of an agreement, getting your head around what it all means, liaising with the bank, the consultant, the accountant, partners, family, it honestly is more exhausting than a big physical day on the farm. So it's really important that we understand the specifics and importantly, surround ourselves with the right support. Think about the what ifs, understand the worst case scenarios and ask the hard questions. All this upfront work, even though it feels uncomfortable, will set you up for long-term success. So today we'll talk about the key things to be aware of, how to structure agreements properly, putting the right support system in place, and keeping clarity and trust through good communication and reviews. We're going to kick off. You'll have the chat box set up through the team meeting. We've got time at the end for Q&A, so if you've got any questions that pop up as we go through, drop them into that chat and we'll come to them at the end of the session. I'm absolutely delighted to be joined by two fantastic guests today. So both are absolute champions with incredible passion for the industry and the people in it. We've got Ria from Rural Business Accountants and Louise from the Share Farming Consultants. They each bring a wealth of experience and insight, and we're thrilled to have them here to share their expertise with you. I'll just click to the next slide. And we'll start with some quick introductions.
Hi everyone, I'm Ria Booker from Rural Business Accountants. We are a farmer-focused accountancy firm based in Ashburton, but we support clients all over New Zealand. About 90% of our clients are farmers and they value that we understand their business. I'm originally from the Waikato, from a dairy farming family. My husband and I moved to Canterbury 11 years ago, and like many imports down here, we haven't looked back. The farming down here is inspiring and exciting. I've also worked for Beef and Lamb in my past life, visiting farmers across Northland, King Country, Otago and wider Canterbury. So I'd like to think I'm pretty well-rounded of the farming challenges no matter what you're farming. I'm really looking forward to talking with you guys today.
Thank you, Ria. I'm Louise Gibson. I'm the co-founder of the Share Farming Consultants. I have a background both in dairy farming and working in the policy space, primarily around share farming. I set up the Share Farming Consultants to provide a specific consultancy to support farm owners and share farmers in having thriving share farming businesses. Our ethos is making sure that both parties are thriving, not just one or the other. We know it's really difficult to navigate, getting especially contract milking right, but also navigating good contracts and filling them in correctly and adhering to them. I'm also really passionate about bringing share farming to sheep and beef, so I will talk a little bit more about sheep and beef today as well. I think we've been really lucky in dairy to have such a cool succession pathway, which is now nearly 100 years old, and it'd be great to see that begin to translate to sheep and beef. I work primarily out of the Waikato, but a lot of the work I do is done online, and it means I can work with clients across the country.
Awesome. And I'm Annie Cates, originally from Edinburgh, but New Zealand's been home for about 18 years now. I'm the education lead at Farm Focus and I've been part of the team, it's actually for about 10 years now. My husband and I farm sheep and beef in the Wairarapa, and over the years we've been involved in setting up a few equity partnerships and quite a few different share farming arrangements. Most recent equity partnership was a dairy farming business that's now in its 4th season. We've really valued our journey through these partnerships. They've helped us grow our equity and strengthen our own business, but mostly we've learnt heaps, had heaps of fun and shared the ups and downs with great people. Farm Focus. So for those of you that don't know, we are a financial management software built specifically for farming businesses. We've been around for over 40 years and proudly based here in Masterton. We're really passionate about helping farmers build confidence and gain clarity around their finances. Nobody really goes farming because they like the office side and the bookwork side. So we're really here to help support better decisions and stronger businesses. For my husband and I personally, I'm a bit biased, but Farm Focus really has been a cornerstone of how we run our businesses. We've been able to create those plans, share good quality information with our team and prospective equity partners to get everyone on board on the same page and track our progress and report on it. We honestly couldn't have made the most of the opportunities we've had without Farm Focus. So I'm pretty passionate about what we do here. Before we get started into the main kind of bit of the webinar, just want to bring your attention to 2 offers that Farm Focus currently has available, specifically created for people that are looking at new businesses or share farming arrangements. So this new offer is hot off the press. It's really just been announced or kind of set live this week, and it's what we're calling the contract milker offer. And it's designed for any farmer looking at starting out as a contract milker, but also available for lower order share milkers or contract managers, sheep and beef or dairy. It's a full subscription. It's full Farm Focus database, all the managing your actuals, invoicing, GST, through to the full budgeting and reporting suite. It's $1 a day, so I think it works out at about 72% discount. $1 a day for the first 2 years, and included in that you get all the onboarding, training and support. So if this is something that appeals to you, you actually sign up for this through your accountant. So get in touch with your accountant or the wonderful Carrie White, who's our business development manager here at Farm Focus. She can point you in the right direction and get the ball rolling with all of that. So that's specifically for contract milkers or share farmers that are ready to go and know that the business is taking off, and they can sign up for that. The other offer we've got, which has been around for quite a few years now, is Focus Advantage. Now, this is designed for people that are looking at new opportunities, but they're not yet confirmed. So Focus Advantage is Farm Focus database, but just access to the budgeting and reporting. So we don't get involved in the actuals at this stage. The Focus Advantage lets you go in, create your budgets, run your scenarios, validate the opportunity, share it to get the bank on board, get the accountant's advice, and if you've got other partners to get on board, you can all be on the same page. If the venture takes off and transactions start rolling in, you will be charged at that point, but up until transactions rolling through, it's completely free. So free use of the budgeting and reporting software. And the great thing is that once transactions hit, your plans, your budgets, all the work you've done sitting there ready to go. If this venture doesn't take off, you simply cancel and carry on. And then if a new venture presents itself, you can sign up for another Focus Advantage subscription. Both of these come with the full support, which I'll talk about towards the end, but you get totally onboarded, one-on-one training, free phone number, all the support to make the most of the software. So we will kick in now with Louise to start off. And please don't hesitate to get in touch if either of those offers appeal. Over to you, Louise.
Awesome. Okay, so we're going to definitely go back to the Focus Advantage in this part, but a good chunk of what I do for my role is supporting both share farmers and farm owners getting set up for success and building the right agreement. Next slide, please, Amy. So I guess probably for a lot of people, you guys will know what the different grades of share farmer are, but the key thing is understanding your value, especially now we're in a stage of probably a little bit more settled milk income. So what the income is coming from milk, but also for meat. And there are a couple of options. One, your standard contract milking or contract farming. That's $1 rate per kg of milk or meat sold. That needs to be set up based on expenses and an agreed dollar value. But that dollar value really needs to ensure that you are going to be remunerated better than a manager and receive some kind of premium. You've got the option of what we call variable order or lower order share farming, The share milkers are actually protected by the Share Milking Act, which has been around since 1937 or 1938. In the Act, there are really specific requirements on having different percentages for those with fewer than 300 cows. There are other requirements around minimum standards. And these contracts are becoming more popular. They did decline in popularity. They were about 15% of the sector about a decade ago. They declined in popularity, but I am seeing more of these coming back this season. They're also probably a great opportunity for non-herd and flock owning sheep and beef farmers. So it's something to consider. When doing this, it's also very similar to how you calculate a contract milking rate, but you also need to ensure that you protect yourself for those fluctuations of dropping down below $7. In these scenarios, the share farmer will provide labour, small vehicles and some chemicals. So that's primarily around cowshed. They do not provide anything to do with animal health, and they don't provide anything to do with the big equipment. Typically, we are seeing some more examples where lower order share milkers need to provide a tractor, but that seems to be more confined to Canterbury. In the herd and flock owning space, it's kind of what we know as 50-50. Now, that works really well for milk. This is a space that is evolving for share farming and sheep and beef, and it may not be 50-50. We are seeing some agreements that are mainly for share milking that may be 55-45%, depending. A lot of that is to do with some of those really big farms that have to hold a lot of equity. And we are beginning to see some really cool stuff around having a company with the farm owner to support farms that have really big herds, to have a herd owning company, and the share farmer increases their share as time goes on, and then they sell out of that equity partnership. In those situations, so for share milking primarily, if you're on a 50% of income, you should be sharing 50% of all feed and grazing off farm costs. The animal costs are covered by the share farmer, so it's a really big jump in expenses, and you typically provide a tractor and feed out equipment, and in some cases sprayer and spreaders. Next slide. Now some statistics. I touched on this before. 16.9% of farms have 50-50 share milkers, and this has actually dropped over the last decade. 14.5% of farms have contract milkers, and this has doubled over the last decade, with variable order share milkers declining. In analysis, and this is really, really important to consider when you are doing contract milking signups primarily, but also the variable order space, is 1/3 of contract milkers will be better off as employed managers due to the rate of, in the dairy-based data, of contract milkers going backwards. So it is really high risk, purely because a number of those contract milkers really do not understand the contract milking rate they should be on. There is now some really good courses. Dairy NZ offer a course through Dairy Training to support upcoming contract milkers, but it's always worth getting a second piece of advice or a second opinion when you are signing up to these contract milking rates. And we're going to need to see you guys doing that more at the variable order game as they become more popular. We did a survey at the end of last year, looking primarily at contract milkers, because we knew already about the 1/3 of contract milkers going backwards, but we also knew there was issues around abusive behaviour and withholding of milk checks. Unsurprisingly to me, but surprisingly to some, 43% of respondents reported experiencing abusive behaviour from a farm owner. Abusive behaviour includes things like gaslighting, shouting, yelling, abusive text messages, all the way up to physical violence. It's a space that when you're a share farmer, you should be able to be in a professional environment. 72% of respondents had experienced a setback that had cost them, set them back mentally or financially or both. 40% of respondents felt pressure to sign an agreement without carrying out due diligence. This is incredibly common. I hear this all the time. And it's really unfortunate because it means that you haven't got the opportunity to go to speak to an expert. Things are really common. Words that you'll hear in these situations will be, oh, well, if you don't sign today, or have someone sign up tomorrow. In that example, it's actually illegal, but it's really difficult to prove. If you ever find your, oh yeah, go jump in, Amy.
Sorry, can you just explain a little bit, what does due diligence actually mean? We hear it a lot, but what is due diligence?
So due diligence is going to find out more about the farm that you're going to take the role with. So about the farm owner, about the production. So getting data to back up what the actual 3-year average was, getting data based on to make sure that your actuals of what they've written in the agreement is correct. So you want to see evidence. I'll talk about this a little bit more, but due diligence is essentially checking out the job and making sure that you are completely confident that everything they have stated is correct and true. And it's also about asking for references from the farm owner as well. It's not just a one-way street. You are entering into a business-to-business partnership.
Yeah.
But 40% is far too high. Contract milkers were also more likely to have their payments withheld under a private agreement. Now, that wasn't surprising. That was nearly 34%. You can see on the graph here. But because in most private agreements, you can see there is typically a line in there that says we can withhold pay for XYZ reason. However, nearly 20% of those on federated farmers had payment withheld. And in a federated farmers agreement, it is really clear that you must not withhold payments for any reason. And the problematic side here is it's really expensive and difficult to litigate. And most lawyers will say, don't even bother. The federated farmers agreement really is not geared to the litigation process. It probably was a great process 20 years ago, but it hasn't really adapted to how litigation works today in current case law. Next slide. So calculating contract milking and share farming rates, contract farming rates. So the number one first port of call before you jump on your farm focus advantage is actually checking that your contract milking rate is in ballpark. The Dairy NZ has a great calculator that is designed for contract milkers, and the whole idea is you put in the previous 3 seasons of milk production. You put in any other income you're going to receive. You put the dollar rate that you've been offered, the expenses. Now, if they haven't provided you with expenses, there is data available through a bunch of budgets online, but your accountant should be able to provide some of this for you too. You are then going to compare that against an equivalent manager. And so your manager rate would be entirely dependent on the number of cows and the area you're in. And then that will ask you a bunch more questions about rent and some other discounts that you can kind of get through having phones and vehicles and stuff that you have as a business owner. And then it'll compare and contrast. Is your contract milking rate actually fair and going to deliver you a profit that is above that of an equivalent manager? In most cases, I find that the first offer of a contract milking rate typically isn't a good one. But please do not jump on the Facebook page, the Contract Milkers Facebook page, and okay, what should my rate be? Because if you can't do that budget, it is demonstrating you're probably not quite ready, and you're going to need to seek some more support and education. We have actually adapted this for sheep and beef. So if you're a sheep and beef farmer, or you know any sheep and beef farmers that are looking at getting involved in this space, we have adapted that. And for your percentage variable order share milkers, all you have to do is put a dollar rate in based on the percentage at the current milk price and a really low milk price, and one in the middle, so that you can compare and look at the fluctuations you're going to have to weather. Obviously, great places to get information. Dairy NZ has their benchmarking information online. There's a bunch of budgets based on each season for different areas and different systems. Your accountant will have some really good information. And for beef and lamb, have got a great data set up on their website. They've got a huge bunch of spreadsheets that you can grab data from. What I really love about the Farm Focus Advantage is that you can actually have it in a really professional setup that's not a spreadsheet. If you're not a confident spreadsheet person, and then it's all there for when you hit go. So that's something to also consider, considering it is free. Some other things to look out for. What I really see quite commonly is withholding information on costs, because they've had a contract milker or a share milker for so long, they supposedly don't know what it is. They should be able to get that from the existing contract milker or share milker, because there should be a free flow of information, a half decent relationship there. If there isn't, that is potentially a little bit of a red flag. It's also really common to just make up a bit of a milk production number and say, oh, we're targeting 100,000 milk solids, we're targeting 200,000 milk solids. But they need to provide that historical information, and you need to see that on the actual website for your supplier. Cow numbers is also really important. Inputs. I've seen a situation where a share milker had signed up to a job, all this milk production promise. The farm owner didn't provide historical nitrogen use information, but they were kind of quite heavily pushed by the farm consultant at the time to sign. Stop asking questions. The contract was virtually blank. And the first season with this farm owner, he said, oh no, we only ever use 20 kilos of nitrogen a hectare, which meant their pasture tanked. And in the end, once they actually managed to log into balance, somewhat by accident, they discovered that the historical use was around 180 kilograms of nitrogen per hectare. It's really, really important that if they don't want to provide you that information, you let them know that you will not be taking the role, because chances are it is going to be used against you. Something else I had in an interview yesterday was the share milker we were interviewing hadn't done budgets below $8.80. With cow prices the way they are this season, it is really, really important that you are beginning to test scenarios at $7. I'm not saying that milk price would drop that low, but you need to know what that is going to look like and how that's going to impact your cash flow, and how are you going to ensure each month that you're going to meet debt repayments, labour costs, and essential operating costs. Next slide. So share farming contracts. Share farming contracts is a massive space. So unfortunately for the sheep and beef guys, this is something that there isn't really a templated agreement out there at the moment. We are working on something, but they won't be in the market until early next year. What's really important is understanding that the brand of the agreement is not going to protect you wholeheartedly. The brand of agreement will provide a good template to fill in all the information as long as it's filled in correctly, but it is not going to save your backside if it's not filled in correctly or you don't follow the instructions. So there's a bunch of things around the legal process if things go wrong. And if you don't follow that and understand that, you could be in all sorts of pain. It's really important that that you ensure that, again, I've talked about this, getting evidence for everything that's filled in, that everything is filled in properly. There's no blank spaces. You should have 3 seasons worth of evidence. Once you've had your agreement filled in, it is really important to get it checked. Now, I had this from a lawyer that it's all well and good for a lawyer to check your agreement, but unless that lawyer understands how the feed inputs, nitrogen inputs, cow numbers all translate to milk production, they're probably not going to be able to stress test your agreement. An accountant or a specialist advisor like myself will be able to help you in that space, but it is really, really important you do take that time to have it checked, that you are more than welcome to take 2 weeks to get an agreement checked out. And if you aren't allowed to do that, chances are you'll actually be experiencing pressure from your farm owner and or consultant to sign, and it may not be worth taking the role. The one thing, I've got 2 really important examples to consider. For those that are in corporate private agreements, some are really good. I've seen a couple of really good, clear, easy to read ones. Others are not. There is one agreement out there that is apparently based on the Share Milking Act. It is really unclear and difficult to follow. There is information in the agreement that is not in the budgets that you're provided. So they may provide you some expenses in the budget and try to be really transparent from that perspective, but there are other hidden costs and penalties within the agreement that you it's not that easy to find. It is, so in those circumstances, if you ever do come across a private agreement, do get a couple of experts to check it out. It's probably going to cost you about $2,500 across everyone, but it's really important that you have that ability, like a slush fund, before you start entering into these agreements and savings. The second example I've seen several times is poorly completed agreements. One we had last year was the agreement stated that the farm would produce 100,000 milk solids. The historical max milk production, and they only found this out after they logged into the Farm Source app, was $75,000, and the farm area had actually reduced from season to season. So from the last season, where it was 75,000, it had reduced, I think, about 20% in area. When they arrived, it had poor power, poor water, no commitment to the farm owner from bringing in additional feed, and there was poor practices around calf rearing. So they were already kind of on the back foot and things financially were really, really awful. It was an impossible undertaking for the contract milker. It did end up going through small claims court, but because the way things are litigated through that, the mediator had no rural experience and probably didn't understand the impact of the payout that actually ended up being given, which was really awful. In a case where the farm owner had, I think it was 5 warranty breaches, they only had to pay out a quarter of what we felt they were actually owed. They actually ended up leaving in the August and have not returned to farming. Next slide. Early stage negotiation tips. I think this is one really important, is that you are confident in negotiating. Don't feel like the numbers that you are given from the get-go are the final offer. You need to share your budget and financial plans openly, and that comes from farm owner to share farmer as well. Be really open about where you are, what your plans are in the future. You need to know your limits, and you need to know what you are worth. You are worth something as a share farmer. You have experience, you have skills, you're going to be operating your own business. If you need a support person, they will come and support you in advocating in that negotiation. It's not just the farm owner needing a consultant. It is becoming way more common that share farmers have consultants as well. They're going to be able to support you in a good negotiation. It's important also to be empathetic. So if you're in a situation where things change mid-season, so say you're a contract milker where the milk prices has dropped and it's actually going to become an impossible task for your farm owner to afford the feed, the nitrogen, the fertilizer, how can you work together to get through the season and have a strong partnership going forward? Because if they go under, so are you. So it's really important that you actually understand and renegotiate later down the track. Next slide. Legal and rational considerations. It's really important to have a really good accountant that understands share farming. Not all do. Some will understand farming, but they may not understand the different grades of share farming. So it's really important you do seek out an accountant that does. If you're with an accountant now that doesn't, it's really easy to change. Have your own advisor. It is not just for farm owners anymore. You need to communicate regularly and professionally. It is really important you are professional in your communication. This is a business-to-business relationship. You can, as a share farmer, set regular meetings, and farm owners, I really encourage you to set professional regular monthly meetings, ideally, so that you guys can actually just focus on farming for that 2 hours that might take. It may only take an hour and a half every month. A lot of what you guys do in passing conversation may brush things off a little bit too quickly. It might be a bit too casual. Most of the time, that stuff isn't documented anyway. This regular communication helps you stay ahead of issues as they before they escalate, and that you can actually start planning. Or if you think something might occur, you can have a plan B just in case. If things are turning tits up, so you've arrived on a farm and things are just not what they should be, seek help. Don't just sweat it out. Don't just suck it up. It is really important that you seek help to be reminded that this may not be normal, or if it is normal, how do you work with it? It was also, like, this is kind of a really important point again that came from a lawyer and an accountant, is that you really need to have a fund set aside of savings before you go into share farming for legal support. This should be probably about $5,000. It seems like a lot of money, but you are going into a really big business. And it is really important that you have the ability to litigate a situation if you're ever in that scenario. Yeah, I think is that me, Annie?
Yeah, awesome. Thank you so much, Louise. There's so much incredible information there. We're now going to hand over to Ria to take the lead from here. Are you there, Ria?
And I did the smart thing of not taking mute off. Good afternoon, everyone. So before I jump into my presentation, ask yourself, Who are my trusted people who will dive into my farming business and ensure the success of the farming contract? How will I know if the farming season has been a success? Is it by what is left in the bank account at the end of the season? By the tax your accountant tells you to pay nearly 2 years after the start of the season? By the milk production or the kill sheets? Finally, how am I going to ensure that a strong working relationship with my farming partner, be it the farm owner, the manager, or the milker? The answer to these questions is not having meetings with whoever in retrospect. The answer involves understanding and talking about your performance during the season. Talk about your performance with your trusted people and with your farming partner. So let's dive into this and move to the next slide. Before you sign the contract, reading contracts is a struggle, isn't it? Like one of the quickest ways to put me to sleep. I swear if my eyes haven't glazed over by page 14, I'm probably not actually reading it. Think about that for yourself. What about you? What do you know? Do you know what you're actually signing? So before you sign that contract, do your due diligence. If I take a step back, in an ideal world, if you were one of my clients, you'd be letting us know that you're looking for your next contract milking job or share farming arrangement before you accept it, so I can ensure you have the right support around you in making such a big decision. Louise has discussed this, and I want to stress that we as accountants may not be the best support for reviewing a contract. And I know this is a great sales pitch for myself. We can certainly help with building a cash flow to support any bank financing, and we can do a sniff test. But in terms of the concreteness of the contracts, it's worth engaging someone like the Share Farming Consultants to have a review. Personally, I'll have a discussion with the client, get a feel for their relationship and gauge of the farm owner, as well as their own knowledge of the contract. Have they done their due diligence? What do they think of the figures presented? Did they have any concerns? This will tell me what further support is required before the contract is signed, but also once it is signed, what support do they need? It is also important to ask yourself, have I put the flattery aside to make the right call? I fully get that you're pumped to have this contract and you're seeing gold, but sadly, Louise and I have both experienced scenarios where people have finished the season with less money in the bank account than when they started, when they would have been better off in a manager's wage. Take the time, do your homework, and if your eyes glaze over like mine, get someone else to review the contract. My intention is not to scaremonger you, but to ensure that you put the same disciplines in as if you would have bought, let's say, $100,000 car off someone off Facebook Marketplace, or before you bought a $1 million house. You're not going to do either of those without doing your due diligence first. And I'm going to keep saying that word, but I know that Louise has covered off what that is with you. If we move to the next slide, which is structuring effective check-ins. Where a client is a first-time contract milker, for example, all the risk factors are high, I will ensure as their accountant I'm checking in quarterly to check they are tracking to budget and as expected. When I refer to risk factors, these are factors such as the farm owner doesn't have a good reputation, or there are known scenarios of other contract milkers or share farmers on that property walking away with a lot less than what they agreed to. There are unique clauses in the contract, such as feed bought in or stock numbers are wintering. The client has chosen not to do their own GST filing, and obviously that's a real pedantic thing for an accountant to say, but it is a good indicator that our client isn't looking at their numbers. The client is not confident in running their accounting software or using the tools available in the software to assess their performance. Effectively, I'm looking for their engagement in the numbers. So I've had my quarterly check-ins with my new contract milkers this season and found that one of my clients is not farming the numbers that were contracted. So we're working through a plan. As you know, next season's jobs are about to be advertised, some already. And even though they're only a few months into this contract, does this particular client need to be proactive in seeing the signs and jumping ship already, or are they going to get caught out? As a side note, as an accountant, I try and encourage my clients to do their own GST because it is the best way for you to see the costs of running your business, that you're not being billed for anything that you didn't agree to, and it gives you a first glimpse into how your business is performing. Paying tax is a good thing. Tools like Farm Focus make doing your GST so easy, and their training is second to none. Many of our clients have Farm Focus, and yes, they're doing their own GST and doing it well. Annie, did you want to add
That's-
anything else in that
No,
one?
that's good to hear. I couldn't agree more. Having that kind of deep dive into your numbers at least once a month to make sure that GST is right totally connects you with the numbers. And I think in a farming business where it's often not one individual, it can be a really good time to sit down with your partner, and like, is my husband, and talk about that, question things. Oh, what is this? Are you sure this is right? And like you say, it just builds that connection. You know your business. So yeah, no, absolutely agree.
So I also 100% encourage you to create structured meetings each quarter with your key advisor to check how you're performing and take the time to work on your business, not in it. This meeting can be someone that has access to your accounting software. It doesn't have to be your accountant. And if you want to engage a farm consultant or advisor, get them access to your accounting software so you're singing off the same song sheet. As I'll say again, the value of having that meeting with someone else is that it actually happens. It's a commitment device, at the very least, so you check in on your business. Furthermore, that meeting might cost you a couple $100. That is the best insurance policy if it means you're spotting signs early where changes need to occur. Next slide. Tools and trackers. So if you had quarterly check-ins, what are you looking for? For those in the dairy industry, it's the milk curve. Those dairy farmers listening, you know more than I do the value of following that curve, and whether you're chasing it, beating it, or last week's weather or today's weather has thrown a spanner in the works. Financial performance against budget. If you're not loading your budget into your accounting software, I highly encourage you to do so. It's no good your accountant having a budget somewhere that you can't see or use. One of the best things you can do before the start of the season is load your budget into your accounting software. If you're not confident creating one, ask the accountant. We'll do it in Excel or directly in your Farm Focus, whatever you're running. It shouldn't be a big cost for your accountant to do this. To highlight affordability, we do it for our contract milkers. We create the budget and load it in for $500. And I'd hope this is something similar to other accountants. When I look at financial performance against budget, I'm looking at one, the income. Down here in Canterbury, it's a real common thing for contract milkers to be signing up to 80% fixed income spread over 12 months with that wash-up payment in the 13th month. This is great for cash flow, but if your production isn't meeting expectations, that 13th month might not look what you expect it to. Secondly, the expenditure against budget. Perhaps you're incurring costs when you shouldn't, that weren't in the contract. Communication during the season is better than at the end, so you can influence change. Cash. It is a sad story when the contract is making money. It's a great contract, but the client forgets about tax and ensuring they have enough funds to cover them through the winter. We see it far too often where people get carried away with all the cash coming in the bank and they forget that effectively a third needs to go to the tax man and then they need to look after themselves over winter. If you know you have a habit to spend, I encourage paying yourself a conservative wage and living off that. Again, it sucks when great operators can't manage their cash, as it may mean they can't progress in their career. Fourthly, how is the relationship going? How is the working relationship going? Sometimes when you're in the thick of calving or mating, you don't have time to look up, especially if things aren't going well. You might look up in January or February, but then you're well past the peak of the milk curve and you know roughly what you're going to make production-wise for the season, and it might be too late to make changes. I dare say if you needed to get out of that contract, you've missed the rush of jobs on offer. So it's worth taking time quarterly to ask the questions. Is this a good working relationship? Is the contract meeting expectations? Are we on the right track? Louise mentioned it today, and again, I'll keep repeating what she says because it's gold. She'll tell you to schedule a monthly meeting with the farm owner, even if you have nothing specific to chat about, just so you can rely on a structured meeting to always be there if you need to air concerns, and it isn't so confronting to have a meeting. So I know I've flown over tracking the milk curve and looking at your financial performance, but Annie is just going to jump in here and take you through how easy this is in Farm Focus.
Amazing. Yeah, thanks, Ria. So all these insights and bits of information and things we should know, it can sound a bit daunting, but like we've said, Farm Focus is built for farmers and set up. So here in Farm Focus in the plan area, your cash flow forecast, we're split into 3 areas. And they're all connected. So the cash flow that we're looking at here is all about dollars. In this example, we've got the current year revised plan, so actuals up to the revision line and planned events beyond the revision line. The actuals are coming through automatically from the coded invoices and transactions, and the budget side can be easily updated using some really smart tools to get that data in. We can pop information on a second line, maybe the original budget to see how we're comparing, maybe last year's actuals to see how that compares, or we can pop quantities on the second line. So there's last year's actuals, we can keep a close eye on that. With the quantities on for this season's milk production, we can view it in cash view. So there's the production payment the following month, production payment the following month, or we can flick to accrual view, which is based on invoice date. So now we can see the production aligned with the payment for that month's production. Just flick back and then we'll move to the livestock tab. The livestock tab takes care of stock reconciliation if the farmer owns stock, so sales and purchase quantities are linked through to the cash flow, and it also takes care of those non-financial events, so our births, deaths and missings, grazing. And then the dairy forecaster. So the dairy forecaster takes care of this season's milk production. The farmer can set it up for their specific setup, dairy company, whether they're owner-operator. Share milkers can enter their percentage, and contract milkers, it becomes manual to enter the contract rate. If the farm business has multiple supply numbers, we can set up a separate dairy forecaster for each one. And we also have a great tool called management tags, where we can track each shed independently. So production, income, stock numbers. The expected production each month is entered there in the grid and can be easily updated. And then for Fonterra, Sinley and Westland, we load up the most recent forecast and you can pull those prices in, or they can be manually entered if you want to overtype them for a more conservative example. The dollars relating to that production and based on that payment that you see there, that monthly production payment on the right, that's going to feed through to the forecaster, to the cash flow. This can all be easily updated as the season progresses. We can also create draft plans in Farm Focus. So we encourage maybe to run a best case scenario and maybe a worst case scenario draft. So we can duplicate that working plan as a draft and make those changes to see maybe how the season would look. Was it worst case or best case, or with another opportunity that might be around? What levers have we got to pull? When should we pull them? And what wee opportunities might there be? The variance reports in Farm Focus, we've got two types of variance reports, year to date and straight variance. The straight variance report lines up two sets of data next to each other. Whole financial year, specific date range, and whatever two sets of data you choose to look at. So this is the revised plan against that original budget that would have been done at the start of the season. We can also view it by payment date or accrual view based on invoice date. Within the report there, you can see those two sets of data at section level, so at really high level, category level, or down at extended code level where we get down into the detail. So see, this is the revised plan versus the original. We can see those dollar values, the dollar variance, quantity variance, and that variance as a percentage. We've also got the year-to-date variance report, and that focuses on 1 month only, whichever month we choose as the last month there is the 1 month that will focus on, as well as the year-to-date. So again, it's tracking the dollar variance, quantity variance, and those variances as a percentage. These variance reports are great for when we've set the original budget, we could compare if we've got a prior year's data available and just to see how we're tracking. That's a really quick light touch into Farm Focus to highlight a few of those tools. Just touch the tip of the iceberg there, but hopefully that gives you a little taste of what is available.
Thanks, Annie. And I do love my Farm Focus clients. It means that when it comes to our year-end meetings, we have a quick chat about what the tax is, but then we can quickly get into, right, how's the business going? What are your goals? Let's get into it, because they understand their numbers already. So this is my final slide. It's about the relationship with your farming partner. This building trust and managing expectations. Maintaining a relationship is not just about getting the work done and performing to your best according to your silo. Just like a good marriage, you need to build trust in each other and create an environment that supports top performance, knowing that you're supported by each other. Building trust and managing expectations. Once you've got that trust, and part of building that trust is about talking money. Something which I think many Kiwis struggle with is talking money. I say this because my family is Dutch, and nearly every conversation has an element of money talk. Even when your child is sick, it's all about how much did the medication cost. But get confident talking about numbers with the farm owner, not just about somatic cell count or kill weights, but how much things cost. A successful partnership is about understanding each other's position, as it helps with managing expectations, having clarity and building trust. The best scenario is a win-win, where you're both happy with your return on investment and how the farm and the animals look. If you can create a partnership that builds trust, then only opportunities can come from that. And when you've got that trust in each other, then you might have that confidence to have an open book session where you share your financials with the farm owner, where it means they have an opportunity to increase your contract rate, or if the costs are more than what was communicated in the budget. On a final note, when you catch up with your accountant each year, it isn't just about what is looking at your how much income tax you have to pay and reflecting on the year that's been. Use it to work out how are you going to achieve your business goals, what support you need to get there. Sometimes it's hard prioritizing time to work on strategy, but if you dedicate time to a meeting with a trusted advisor to discuss it, you are less likely to make an excuse to finally repair that fence in the back paddock. Value yourself and your business. Spend the time to review your position and where you're going so you can work towards your goal constructively. You can't rely on hard work alone to get there, but if you sign up to the right share farming partnership and nurture its success, you are more likely to get there. Thank you. That's me.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Ria. Again, so much incredible information and great insights. If you have any questions that have popped into your head while we've been going through that, now's a great time to pop them into the chat, and we'll come to a Q&A session at the end. A couple of key takeaways for me that have really stuck in my mind listening to you, Louise. I kept thinking, if it's not written down and documented, you have to almost presume it's not going to happen. It's no good just having the, oh, yeah, conversations where it's said in good faith and said, but get it written down, get it documented, get the evidence to make those data-driven decisions. So at Farm Focus, we love making data-backed decisions, but it's not just about those financial numbers. Any conversation, document it, write it down.
Yeah, I'll jump in there, Annie, because I didn't actually talk about that, but I was meant to.
Yeah, no,
one of the more common scenarios we do see is farm owners, or in further direction, share farmers making a lot of promises, verbally. And that's probably one of the biggest things we see when things begin to fall over, is those things are never delivered on, and it can actually have a real serious financial impact to either party as a result. Sorry, so carry on, Danny.
No, and I think that when you're going into that agreement and you're new to all of this, you feel like you're being given this opportunity and you should be really grateful, and you don't want to be the negative person asking hard questions and pushing and pushing and pushing. So you don't need to be kind of grateful or feel scared. It's got to be done. Ask the questions, get it written down, get the evidence to make those data-backed decisions. And Ria, I think the takeaway listening to you speak is not all professionals are built the same. A rural professional that understands farming and understands farmers and how they operate and how they communicate is key. So yeah, really invest some time and energy to do some research, to find those key rural professionals that really understand, and prioritize that time spent on your business, not just in your business. We've got some resources on a slide here. We've got Ria, Louise and ourselves websites. There's treasure trove of information on each of those sites, including contact details to get in touch with any of the companies. We've also popped up there the Dairy NZ website and the Beef and Lamb website. Again, there's just a wealth of information and resources on those sites, so do feel free to go and check them out. We've now got time left for our Q&A session. I'm just going to bring up our chat box. Ria or Louise, did you have any questions to kick us off while I bring that up?
Look, I'm a bit of a nerd, an accounting nerd, and I often get asked by clients, why Farm Focus? Why Farm Focus over Xero? Because those are the two main products that we see.
Ria, that sounds like a question for me. I
Yeah, I'm
am
not
really
gonna answer it.
biased. I love my job and I passionately love Farm Focus. I am Annie from Farm Focus as my official title. It's one platform to learn. So you log in, as you saw in that quick demo, cash flow, livestock numbers, milk production, all connected, feeds through to your bank transactions and invoices. It's one place to log in and get all of that. Importantly, it's built for farmers. So it's got really intuitive, easy to use tools that farmers can use. See, none of us go farming because we like the bookwork side, but it's designed for farmers to manage their own GST, look after their own budgets and get those insights into their business. Like you spoke about, Ria, that's what we want to see. Not that there's anything wrong with getting support to do that, but it's designed to build that connection with farm-specific tools. We are updating all the time with what's needed to meet the needs of modern agri-businesses. So we're constantly changing and evolving, but the one big thing which sets us apart and we're so proud of is our support team. So we've got the most awesome team just sitting through the wall there that are on the phone. We've got live chat. So you can speak to real people that walk the talk. You can ring grumpy, having trouble, frustrated, and they totally get what you are talking about and can help answer any questions. So yeah, we are pretty passionate supporters of our own product.
From an accounting perspective, your accountant might encourage you to go with a particular platform, but who's the business owner? You are. So find the software that you find easy to use, that you know you're going to engage with. That's all I'd say.
Yeah, no, thank you for that. I'm just having a read. I'll just read out a few of these. So somebody's commented in here saying, Louise, the survey results are worrying and show some poor practice by farm owners and a lot of negativity or sorry, naivety among contract milkers. Could poor money management, maybe high expenditure on unnecessary items, attribute to the results showing contract returns being below management wage? So they're asking who took part in your survey and could high expenses and kind of poor money management attribute to those poor results?
Okay, yeah. So the survey, if you want to have it, if anyone here wants to actually have a look at the full report, it is available to download from our website. But the kind of key highlights from that comment, we had 276 respondents overall, of which I think there's over 200 were current contract milkers, which equates to about 8% of existing contract milkers. So it's a really high response rate when we look at what we see from, say, like a Federated Farmers survey. Most of their surveys are below 5% of all farmers. What we saw, so definitely, there will definitely be some poor money management. However, we also saw over 40% were pressured to sign. We saw those that were pressured to sign also experienced higher rates of abusive behaviour, were pressured into taking risks from a health and safety perspective. Most, I think it actually almost ended up like 56 to 60% were in breach of what we call the contract milking versus employment law tests. And there, it's a fine line. It's a really fine line between contract milking and employment law. And had that been litigated, there would have been really serious outcomes for the farm owners. So it was poor practices like setting hours, not providing full expenses, expecting them to pay for things they probably shouldn't have been, not providing transparent milk production data was a major. The other side, the impact financially of when you withhold milk payments has a really major impact, not only on the contract milking being able to move to a new role, but also a lot on their IRD requirements, so being able to pay their tax. So a lot of them use that 13-month payment to go toward their tax payment, and a lot end up in a situation where they can't do that because their milk payment's been withheld. So there's definitely going to be poor management, and this is something I really get into arguments about, and that if you aren't able to do a basic budget, you are not ready to go contract milking, like number one. But if a farm owner or a farm consultant is pressuring someone to sign, one, it's a really major red flag, and they definitely do target more naive contract milkers. They do it on purpose, and I've seen it from a couple of repeat offenders. And they're doing it knowingly because they know that those contract milkers aren't going to ask as many questions, they aren't going to fight back, and they only really want them for a season or 2 seasons. So no, and I agree. I think there's a comment there about having some really good worksheets and information. I think there actually probably is some really good information on the Dairy NZ website, but I've got quite a number of blog posts about that topic and what you can do as a share farmer owner and a farm owner, as a share farmer.
So that comment saying that as a farm owner, looking at what we might be able to offer as part of our succession planning, they're disappointed by what those wanting to get into the industry are seeing. So wondering if there's an opportunity to get a few worksheets, information out there, for example, habits of a great share farm owner and habits of a great share farm or contract milker. I love this comment, the whole contract milking, share milking, it's kind of become quite a hot topic. And like you saw, we've just brought out this offer, this farm focus offer, because we're really dedicated to supporting those coming into the industry. We've had some great conversations with the banks recently. They seem to be really ramping up that support of the early stage people entering the industry to ensure they stay. So I really appreciate this comment. We've loved putting this webinar together. It's been really interesting and great working together. So whether off the back of this, we can compile a few more resources, like Louise says, there's bits and pieces out there. But no, I think you've highlighted something really important there. We've got another question, somebody saying, will there be a recording of this meeting to access later to show an employee wanting to go contract milking? Absolutely. So this is recorded and you'll get a recording sent out. So hopefully we've added some value. It's a lot of it does, I think, probably sound a bit negative and heavy, and it kind of needs to, because what we see is people going in and they aren't aware of all this heavy negativity or what they need to think about, and it doesn't bode well for the long-term success. But in saying that, the great arrangements and contracts, we do see the success that people can have. So my husband, he's in his 34th or 35th year in equity partnership on our home farm, which is pretty cool. And there's some great success stories out there. So we really want to thank everyone for joining today. That's 2 minutes too, so I think we've nailed it. If there's any last minute burning questions, there's a minute or two to pop them in there. Otherwise, we will round off. Ria or Louise, were there any closing comments?
I think just this season, rely on your experts as a farm owner, seek expert help. As a new share farmer, make sure, even if we're moving to a new role, I've seen really experienced share farmers take a new opportunity thinking it's going to be really awesome, and even they get burned. So use experts, invest in that advice. It is an investment, and it's well worth doing.
Awesome. Thank you, Louise.
No, happy with that. Well done. And thanks everyone for attending.
Yeah, we really appreciate you all attending. So we shall say farewell, say take care in this wild weather that we're expected for today. And yeah, thank you so much for joining us. Bye.